Back then, I didn't yet know she would come crawling back to me, and I would show her something that would leave her speechless. You ever notice how a single scent can unspool a whole memory? I was prepping duck confit in the back kitchen of Savor, our restaurant, our dream, when I caught a trace of something that didn't belong. It was faint, floral, layered with something muskier. Not the thyme or the rendered fat I'd been working with all morning. No, this was cologne. Foreign. Intrusive. Wrong. It came from her bag. Camille always left her purse hanging on the coat hook by the pantry. I'd gone in to grab her car keys. She asked me to pick up our son Ethan from piano, said she was slammed with edits for her latest review. I never snoop. Never needed to. But when I reached in and brushed against something hard in the pocket, curiosity whispered. I pulled out a cufflink. Not mine. Gold. Engraved with the initials VGL. Heavy. Polished. Reeking of that same unfamiliar scent. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was confusion. The kind that crawls over your skin, cold and nauseating. My hands, calloused, burned, steady from years of plating with precision, trembled. That's when the kitchen noise died around me. The clang of pans, the hiss of steam, all faded into a vacuum. Just me, the cufflink, the scent, and a terrible silence in my chest. Then something else. Her scarf was still tucked into the side of the bag. When I pulled it free to check for her keys, I saw a faint reddish stain near the edge, wine maybe. But it had dried, dark and out of place, as if it had been pressed against warm skin, not spilled at dinner. My chef's instincts kicked in. I know stains. I know the difference between what lands on a napkin during a meal and what transfers during a closer personal connection. My throat went dry. And then I remembered, just this morning, when Camille kissed me goodbye, she'd leaned in close. Too close. The scent wasn't just in her bag. It lingered faintly on her skin, beneath the jasmine perfume she always wore. And I noticed something else, too. Something I had buried in the chaos of the kitchen until now. Her dress hung loose in places it never had before. Camille was meticulous with her appearance. Always. Even for errands. Always. But that morning, her dress clung loose in places it never had, and she moved like someone who had dressed quickly, as if getting back in time had mattered more than how she looked to me. The pieces clattered into place like dropped cutlery. My breath caught. My temples buzzed. The clink of the cufflink dropping onto the stainless steel counter was like a bullet casing hitting the floor. That night, she said she had a late dinner review. Some new fusion spot uptown. She smelled different when she kissed me goodbye. New lipstick, a dress I hadn't seen in months. Her voice was sweet, her smile just wide enough. But I could taste the lie in the air like too much cayenne in a roux. So I followed her. I don't know what got into me. Call it instinct, call it madness. I told Lena, my sous chef, to close up. Said I wasn't feeling well. My hand shook as I threw on a jacket, but my senses were razor sharp. Every smell on the wind, every flick of light in the French Quarter felt exaggerated, amplified. Camille didn't go uptown. She went down Decatur, past the square, to the Blue Room, an old jazz club she used to love before life got too busy. She didn't know I was watching from across the street, tucked behind a row of parked cars. She stepped inside, and not 5 minutes later, a man in a gray coat joined her at a shadowed corner booth. Even in the dim light, I could see the way she leaned toward him. The tilt of her head, the way she laughed, open-mouthed, the way she used to with me when we were younger and everything was still new. Her hand rested on the table, fingers brushing his. And just before she reached for her wine glass, her dress sleeve shifted. A smudge, a faint purplish mark just under the collarbone. My breath stopped. I knew that mark. The shape, the size. That was no accidental bruise. I gripped the railing next to me so hard my knuckles burned. I didn't go inside. Couldn't. Not yet. Back at Savor, Lena was in the walk-in fridge. I didn't speak. Just handed her the cufflink. "This is Camille's?" she asked. "It was in her bag," I said, voice hollow. She stared at me, alarm flashing across her face. "Gabriel, are you sure?" I followed her. The silence was colder than the fridge air. She pressed her hand to her mouth. I can't believe this. Camille? That woman sat here last week like nothing was wrong. You gave her your soul. I slid down against the metal wall, pulling my wedding ring off and staring at it in my palm. You remember that night in Belize? When we toasted a building savor from scratch. She said, a life of shared tastes. I believed her. Every word. Lena's voice hardened. You want justice? Then start cooking the truth out of the shadows. That night, while Camille was in the shower, steam fogging the mirror, her voice humming like everything was normal, I stood by her nightstand. Her tablet was charging. Password protected. I knew the code. I opened it. There it was. An email. Subject. Last night was delicious. Next time, let's skip dessert. Sign V. I closed the tablet, slid it under my coat, and walked out into the night. No more denial. They thought they could taste betrayal and walk away clean. I'd serve them what they'd earned, raw and unforgettable. There's a moment, right before the truth hits you, when time stretches, like the space between lightning and thunder. You see a flash, you feel it coming, and then the sound follows, shattering. For me, it came on a Thursday night, just after the dinner rush. Rain rattled the windows of Savor, streaking them like tears on glass. The kitchen had gone still. The clang of pans had faded. All that remained was the low hum of refrigeration, the soft hiss of a burner left on low, and the echo of her laughter from memory, sweet, practiced, now poisoned. Camille had said she'd be home late again. Another review dinner. She didn't know I had her tablet. I sat in my office, lights off, only the screen casting its cold glow. My fingers hovered above the screen like they used to hover over a new dish, eager, uncertain, reverent. I tapped the mail icon. At first, there were only fragments. Half-deleted messages, threads without context. One read, "Tonight was unforgettable. I'm still thinking about you." No name, just an initial, V. But then I opened the photos. One image stopped me cold. Camille, my wife, at the edge of a rooftop bar, lit by fairy lights, a glass of champagne in one hand, her other hand wrapped around the arm of a man with a salt and pepper beard. I knew that arm. I'd shaken that hand. That suit jacket was tailor-made, gray with a pale lavender pocket square. Vincent Delacroix, my investor, my old friend, the man who believed in Savor when it was nothing more than a dream scribbled on napkins. He'd sat at our table, toasted our wedding, and now he was stealing what I'd built with his silver tongue and hidden hands. I swiped through more photos, each one slicing deeper. Camille in the same dress from the jazz club. Vincent's hand on her lower back. A gift bag between them from Lemieux. An exclusive boutique Camille and I once walked past and agreed was too much for people like us. He'd taken her there, spoiled her, bought her things with the money I helped him earn. Then I saw it, a receipt, tucked into a file Camille had photographed, a slip of paper with the Savor logo, a note scribbled in the corner, in Vincent's handwriting, charge it to the house account. She's earned it. He was using our restaurant, my blood, sweat, and soul, to fund his affair with my wife. A sound escaped me, half laugh, half gasp. I stood so quickly the chair toppled over. My elbow hit the corner of the desk and sent a framed photo crashing to the floor. I looked down. It was from our opening night. Camille in a crimson dress. Me in Chef White's, flowers still on my sleeve. Her hand was on my chest, mine around her waist. We looked like a team. The glass of the frame had shattered. Like us. I drove without knowing where I was going, windshield wipers slashing the downpour into fragments. I ended up in front of Vincent's downtown office, where he ran his wine import business. A single light was on upstairs. I waited, watched. My breath fogged the window. Then he stepped out, umbrella over his head, laughing into his phone. I cracked the window. His voice carried. "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, my dear. Let's make it a special occasion." I gripped the wheel until my knuckles went white. My ears rang. My pulse throbbed in my jaw. I didn't follow him. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove to the Riverwalk. The Mississippi churned in the dark, thick and angry. I stepped out into the storm, let the rain soak through my jacket down to the skin. I screamed, loud and broken, into the wind. I gave her everything. Lightning cracked, illuminating the path in a silver-white flash. Thunder rolled behind it. I knelt by a bench and covered my face, rain mixing with tears. I don't know how long I stayed there. I felt hollow scraped out, a man carved by betrayal. When I finally stood, my mind had gone still. Cold, focused. I drove back to Savor, walked into the kitchen, dripping water, and opened the drawer beneath the prep station. Inside was a box, one Camille gave me years ago, filled with old recipes and handwritten notes from our first year of marriage. I dumped it onto the counter. Among the faded cards and oil-stained papers was a note, one she'd written me during our first catering job. I remembered every word, but I read it again anyway. No matter what happens, our kitchen is our truth. Our love, plated and real. I laughed bitterly and struck a match. The note curled black in the fire from the stove, turning to ash before it reached the sink. When I got home, Camille was asleep, or pretending to be. I watched her for a moment. Her face soft, lips slightly parted, hair perfectly arranged on the pillow, as if she hadn't been somewhere else hours before. With him, I scanned her neck. No visible marks tonight, but I could still smell the faint trace of his cologne on her scarf draped over the bedpost. I went into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. The man looking back was done being blind. She cheated on me, I whispered, gripping the sink. My voice hardened, and I will make her regret it. Rain hammered the windows of the loft above Savor, as if the sky itself had something to say. I stood in our open-concept living room. The city's lights blurred behind the storm outside. Shadows from flickering candles danced along the walls. Camille insisted they helped her think when writing, but tonight they looked like ghosts, mocking us, flickering reminders of a warmth that had long since turned cold. She entered from the bedroom, barefoot, wine glass in hand. Her silk robe clung to her, casual and familiar in the way only long-term connection or betrayal could be. I noticed again what I'd begun to notice too often, the faint mark just beneath her collarbone, the soft flush that didn't come from wine or heat. "Hey," she said, lightly sipping. "You're home late. Everything okay?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I pulled her tablet from my coat and set on the table between us. Quiet, deliberate. Camille blinked. "What is this?" "You tell me." She looked down, saw the lock screen, and froze. Her fingers tightened around the stem of the glass. "I know about him," I said. My voice didn't rise. Not yet. It didn't need to. The storm outside carried enough thunder. Silence. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The practiced critic for once without words. "I found a cufflink," I continued. "Smelled his cologne on your scarf. Saw the photos on your tablet. The texts. The receipts. Camille, it's Vincent." "Vincent?" Her eyes flicked to the window. "Anywhere but me. It's not what you think." My laugh was bitter. "Then what is it exactly? Business development? Networking over champagne while you weren't wearing a bra?" A flash of lightning split the sky. She flinched. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "You were never home. You were always in the kitchen. Even when you were here, you weren't here." "Oh, so this is my fault?" My hand shook now, fists clenched at my sides. "I gave you everything. My time, my heart, this." I swept my arm toward the floor, where a framed photo of our wedding day had fallen, the glass shattered. "You disregarded our vows." "I was lonely, Gabriel," she said, her voice cracking. "I tried." "No." I cut her off. "You didn't try. You lied. You looked me in the eye every night, and you lied. You kissed our son goodnight with another man's cologne on your neck." A sudden buzz broke through the moment. Her phone, lighting up on the counter dot. Message from Vincent D. "Did you tell him yet?" The air thickened. I stepped forward, picked up the phone, and read it aloud. Her face went pale. How long, Camille? She looked down, whispered, almost a year. That was the cut. Not the affair. Not the secrets, The time, A year. Of dinners. Laughter. Ethan's birthday. Our anniversary. All a lie. You broke my heart, I said, my voice shaking, but not my soul. Tears welled in her eyes. Gabriel, I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I snapped. Every moment you spent with him, you were stealing from me. From our son. And then, soft footsteps from the hallway. Dad, Ethan. He stood there in his pajamas, rubbing one eye, confusion on his face. My fury cracked like brittle sugar. Go back to bed, buddy, I said, trying to steady my voice. We're just talking. But he'd heard enough. Camille turned away, her shoulders trembling. I could see her reflection in the window, broken, and maybe, just maybe, so was I. You know what the worst part is? I said quietly, I still don't know if I'm more hurt as your husband or as a chef. Because you didn't just betray me. You tainted everything we built. She turned to me. Are you going to tell everyone? Humiliate me? Burn it all down? I stared at her. My jaw clenched. There it was. The moral dilemma. Public exposure or private suffering. Humiliation or dignity. I took off my wedding ring, held it between two fingers, stared at the band that once meant forever. Then I walked to the window and flicked it out into the storm. Consider this your final review, I said. 0 stars. She gasped. I grabbed my coat, passed Ethan without a word, and opened the door. Before I stepped out, I turned back. You should have picked a better man to ruin your life with, I said, voice low, because now I'm going to ruin his. The knife in my hand sliced through the blood orange like it owed me something. Clean, deliberate, controlled fury. Outside the kitchen window, the storm had passed, leaving behind a slate-gray sky and a city that didn't care what it had washed away. Inside Savor, I stood alone, sleeves rolled up, staring at the prep counter where Camille and I used to laugh while inventing tasting menus. Now the silence in the kitchen was suffocating. Too clean, too empty, too full of ghosts. I was surrounded by the scent of rosemary, citrus, and betrayal. Every corner of this place whispered her name. It wasn't just that she had an affair with Vincent. It was how easily she had blended it into our life. How she'd interacted with me normally after being with him. How she kissed our son goodnight, knowing what she had done that afternoon. The memories were everywhere. Her first kiss tasted like fresh mint and chocolate cake, The night she told me she was pregnant, we'd danced in the kitchen barefoot with flour on our faces. The day Ethan was born, she clutched my hand and said, we made something perfect. Now all of it felt staged. A dream where I'd been the only one asleep. I gritted my teeth and slammed the chef's knife into the cutting board. This wasn't going to end with me alone in a cold kitchen. No, she thought she could destroy me quietly. I'd destroy them publicly. 3 days later, Camille showed up at the restaurant before opening, her eyes red-rimmed, mascara trailing like black veins down her cheeks. Gabriel, please. I didn't stop chopping. You shouldn't be here. She moved closer. I made a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake. But you and Ethan were a family. I glanced at her. That didn't stop you when you were undressing in Vincent's hotel suite. She flinched. Gabriel, I was confused. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed from you. Spare me the monologue. I snapped. You were confused. You were careful. Careful enough to delete the texts. To book the meetings under fake names. To use the restaurant's account to buy gifts. Her expression faltered. Yeah, I said softly, I know about that too. She started to cry. I watched for a moment, her dramatic shuddering, the practiced sobs, and felt nothing. I need you to leave, I said. Are you going to tell Ethan? She whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because just then my phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. Back off, Gabriel. Don't ruin what's left. You do, and I'll make sure you lose everything. Vincent, of course. Threats. From a man who siphoned my business's funds. Who toasted my marriage and then slept with my wife. The man who called Savor our shared legacy while feeding it to the wolves. I stared at the message. Cold sweat broke across my neck. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I remembered who I was. A chef. Not just any chef. A man whose entire life depended on noticing the smallest inconsistencies. How one grain of salt too many could ruin a dish. How the balance of heat and acid made or broke a plate. A man trained to observe, analyze, and adjust under pressure. I wasn't going to let emotion derail me. I was going to treat this betrayal like a recipe gone wrong. Break it down, correct it, and serve justice on a silver platter. I called Lena. I need someone who can pull up financials, deleted emails, bank transfers. Someone discreet. Lena didn't hesitate. You remember Nate? Nate was her cousin, a cybersecurity expert. Once helped me recover a hacked reservation system. By the next evening, I had a flash drive full of damning data. Transfers from Savor's accounts to Vincent's private holding company. Email threads between Camille and Vincent mocking my emotional palate and overcooked ego. A draft review Camille had written, praising Vincent's soon-to-launch wine bar, Eminence, and tearing Savor apart in veiled language. A betrayal preloaded for publication. My hands trembled, not with grief, with resolve. Lena, I said, staring at the screen, we're going to expose them. Ow! I turned toward the calendar on the wall. Red circle around next Friday. Savor's 10-year anniversary gala. A celebration of everything we'd built. The press, the critics, the food elites of New Orleans, all expected to attend. I'm going to serve the truth, I said. Right on schedule. We got to work. Nate masked the data trail. Lena helped draft a visual presentation, emails, bank statements, timed videos synced to a script. I rehearsed it like a performance, because that's what it was. Revenge, plated and garnished. But it wasn't just about them anymore. It was about me, about reclaiming my name, my work, my son's legacy. I would not be remembered as the fool who cooked while his life burned behind him. She thought she could destroy me. I said aloud to the empty kitchen, but I'm going to make her pay. In front of everyone. Now, the plan is set. The stage, Savor's 10-year gala. The audience, the city's culinary elite. The main course, justice. And the twist? They don't even know what's coming. I slipped the flash drive into my jacket pocket and stepped into the empty dining room, lit only by moonlight. Next week, this room would be full of laughter and clinking glasses. By the end of the night, it would be silent. The chandeliers inside Savor sparkled like 1,000 eyes watching from above. It was the 10-year anniversary of the restaurant Camille and I had built together, a glittering full-circle moment. The dining room was draped in ivory linens and soft amber lighting, live jazz weaving through the air like perfume. Every table was filled with New Orleans culinary elite. Critics, chefs, investors, influencers. Smiles bloomed over glasses of Sauvignon Blanc. Waiters in tuxedos floated like ghosts. And I stood at the edge of it all, calm on the outside, flames behind my eyes. Camille moved through the crowd, her smile poised and practiced. She wore deep emerald, a color she once said made her feel invincible. Vincent was there, too, centered, relaxed, sipping wine from his own import line. The man had no idea his kingdom was about to burn. I adjusted my chef's coat and stepped onto the small stage beneath the spotlight, just as dessert was being served. I cleared my throat. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the mic, the hum of anticipation lifting. Thank you for joining us tonight. 10 years ago, Savor opened its doors with a single promise, to serve food with truth. Because every dish, every flavor, every plate tells a story. Camille smiled at me, unsure. I smiled back. Tonight, I have one more story to share. I looked down at the remote in my hand. My thumb hovered just for a second. Then I pressed it. The lights dimmed. Behind me, the projector screen lit up. At first, the image was innocent, our early days. Camille and me opening the doors of Savor. Laughter, ribbon cuttings. Then the tone changed. A screenshot, an email from Camille to Vincent. He still doesn't suspect a thing. Poor Gabriel. He's too busy chasing perfection to notice reality. Gasps. More images, Vincent's bank records, with withdrawals siphoned from savers' accounts to a private firm. Then, video footage. Nate had done it, dug into cloud storage, and pulled it all. Camille in a hotel elevator with Vincent Doc. Camille leaving Lemieux's boutique with a gift bag and his hand in hers. I turned to the crowd. This restaurant was my home, my purpose, my family's legacy. I poured every ounce of myself into it. While I looked directly at Camille and Vincent, used it as a feeding trough. The screen flicked one last time. A video clip, audio only. Vincent's voice unmistakable. Let him keep cooking. He's too proud to see we've already taken the best part of his life. Silence. Camille stood frozen, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. A reporter in the crowd began whispering frantically into her phone. A local food critic gawked, mouth open. Vincent rose to his feet. This is slander. Lena stepped forward from the shadows, voice sharp. It's evidence. She dropped a folder on the table in front of him. Nate's printouts of every transaction, email, and message. Another voice rang out. My God, said one of Vincent's investors. You use Savers books to prop up Eminence? He turned to the others. Pull the funding. Immediately, panic spread across Vincent's face like spilled wine. Camille backed toward the wall, face pale. Gabriel, please. Don't, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't beg now. She stepped forward anyway. It wasn't just about him. I was drowning. You were never there. I was right here, I said, pointing to the kitchen. Every night, fighting for our dream. Fighting for you. She reached for me. I stepped back. You broke my heart, Camille, I said, voice heavy. But you don't get to break my name. Applause erupted. At first, tentative. Then it rolled through the room like thunder. Guests stood. Lena hugged me. Even the critics, once skeptical of my storytelling menus, rose to their feet, some with tears in their eyes. Camille covered her face and ran. Vincent followed, shouting, This isn't over. Oh, but it was. I stood alone on the balcony later, watching the lights of the French Quarter pulse in the distance. The night air smelled of rain and rosemary. I took a long breath and exhaled slowly. There it was. Relief. Not triumph. Not glee. Just a slow release, like air leaving a balloon that had been stretched too thin for too long. I thought I'd feel more. Maybe joy. Maybe peace. Instead, I felt done. Lena joined me, holding 2 glasses of bourbon. To justice, she said. I took one and raised it. And to the fire it took to get there. We clinked. But even as the night wound down, whispers floated around the room like smoke. Did you hear Camille's critic profile was suspended? They say Vincent's license might be pulled. I heard she tried to board a flight this morning, alone. I said nothing, just listened. Because sometimes revenge doesn't need a second course. Sometimes the smell of ash is enough. 2 years had passed since the gala. 2 years since the applause, the revelations, the shattered wine glass at Camille's feet. Since Vincent's investors abandoned him in one swift, stunned wave, and Camille disappeared into the silence that follows scandal. The Savor I once built with love had transformed. Now it stood under new management. Young chefs I mentored, people who respected the soul of the kitchen and not just its profits. I'd stepped away from the restaurant world, but I hadn't stopped cooking. I ran a community kitchen now, a sun-washed place on Burgundy Street where I taught kids and families how to cook with what they had, how to season with intention, how to taste with care. My apron still bore stains, but not from shame, from life. I was stirring a pot of jambalaya, laughing with a young student, when a voice broke my rhythm. Gabriel. I turned. Camille stood in the doorway, framed by the morning light. She looked different, thinner, her hair dull, no longer swept into the elegant waves she once wore like armor. The green of her eyes, once so sharp, had dimmed into a kind of quiet desperation. Her dress hung off her like memory. We stared at each other for a moment. The children around me kept working, unaware of the moment thickening in the air. "I need to speak with you," she said softly. I nodded toward the alley behind the kitchen. She followed. Outside, the city breathed around us. Music from a distant brass band, the smell of coffee and baked bread. But between us, only silence. "Then he left me," she said. "Vincent, a month after the gala. He moved to Miami. Told me I was too much trouble." I said nothing. "I lost my critic position," she continued, "after the emails leaked. No publication will touch me. I freelance now, barely." Her eyes glistened. "I'm not here to beg. I just needed to tell you I was wrong, that I ruined everything." "You did," I said without cruelty. "But not just for me." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I reached into my satchel and pulled out a folded letter. "From your lawyer," I said. "It's about the LLC documents you and Vincent filed while planning Eminence. You used our restaurant's trust account as seed money." She blinked, confused. "I bought Eminence, Camille, quietly, at auction, after Vincent defaulted on his licensing fees and his investors sued him. The building, the name, everything." She opened her mouth, stunned. "I turned it into a culinary school," I said, "for single parents and veterans. We opened last month." Camille sank onto a crate, her hands shaking. "You mean it's gone?" "No," I said calmly. "It's just been repurposed. Like me." She exhaled a bitter laugh. "I thought you'd want to destroy me." "I did. Once," I admitted. "But then I realized destruction wasn't the point. Rebuilding was." She looked up at me. "I don't know who I am anymore." "I do," I said gently. "You're the woman who once said we could survive anything, even overspiced gumbo." A sad smile played on my lips. "Turns out you were wrong about that, too." She stood, unsteady. "Goodbye, Camille." She hesitated, then nodded and walked away. I didn't watch her go. Later that night, I stood on the riverbank, not far from where I once screamed into the rain. The Mississippi moved slowly, like memory, thick and wide and never quite still. I pulled from my coat pocket an old recipe card. Faded handwriting. Her handwriting. Spiced peach tart with rosemary whipped cream. The last dish we ever made together before everything curdled. I held the card for a moment, then released it. The paper fluttered down into the river, dancing on the current until it vanished into the black. She thought she had destroyed me, I whispered to the night, but I rose from the ashes. I looked up. Above me, the stars glittered in silence, a sky scrubbed clean. Betrayal shattered my dreams, but I created new ones. And I walked home under that starry sky, whole, freed, alive.